Today's webinar is titled Women's Influence in International Business. Our presenter is Aiyana Mathews, a 2004 RIT alumna from the College of Imaging Arts and Sciences and founder and owner of Gardner-Mathews, an international business development and global travel consultancy. Aiyana's frequent exploration of the road less traveled has nurtured her natural affinity for intercultural exchange, foreign languages, and business acumen. She incorporates this unique skill set, along with her extensive global experiences, into the operation of Gardner-Mathews. Aiyana received her Bachelor of Science from RIT with a minor in Spanish and Latin American literature. In 1999, she completed a research study at Chiba University in the Faculty of Engineering. After launching her career in the U.S., she returned to Japan in 2007 to work for the Japanese government spreading interculturalization. In 2009, she was selected to be co-director of the 2010 Miyagi Art and Cultural Show, a large regional art exhibit in Sendai City. She began hosting monthly cultural events, and she gained popularity through an online TV show called One Me Guy Live. In 2010, Aiyana received the National Award for a fusion work of Japanese and African art, and her piece was on display at the National Kokeshi Museum in Naruko for 1 year. During her journey, Aiyana's indubitable ability to foster relationships, structure teams, and coordinate unique projects has made her a dynamic asset to both the private sector and not-profit world. We're thrilled to have you with us, Aiyana. Thanks for joining, and take it away.
Thank you so much, and thank you all, everybody, for joining in. I just want to do a sound check and make sure that I'm audible.
Yeah. We can hear you. Everyone else out there?
All right, great. So again, hi everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in. The topic is a compilation of my experiences, both personal encounters and observance of some incredible women I've encountered over the years. The importance to speak on this topic is founded in these primary elements. The first being desire. Growing up as an American in a typical middle-class household to American parents, I've always had a desire to explore the international communities, foreign language, and culture. I was fortunate to have supportive parents and grew up in a city which made accessing international communities relatively easy. The second element would be knowledge. Knowledge is power. If you know what's essential for putting yourself in a better position, then you can set forth to accomplish goals. Many of us who elected to pursue a degree at RIT took into consideration the knowledge or good education we would receive from a prestigious institute of technology, thus positioning ourselves to pursue our career goals. And the third of those is application. It's understanding how to apply that knowledge and leveraging information that makes us a diva boss. Application is what builds experience, and experience is what helps us become an authority in the field. Sometimes I've noted that the desire can be fueled from knowledge and application. I myself am an entrepreneur. I launched Gardner-Mathews, a travel consultancy, which specializes in customized itineraries for 3 sectors of travel: festival-based travel, leisure travel, and corporate travel. I expanded the corporate aspect of the business and developed another business which supports international business development and providing business matchmaking services. I did research at Chiba University, which turned out to be the catalyst of a 17-year relationship that I would have with Japan, Japanese people, and Japanese business. My understanding of international business and exchange has taken place over the same period of time in many other markets. I plan to delve more into those experiences throughout the presentation. Now I'd like for us to have a look at our discussion ahead according to our outline. I really hope and encourage and would like for this to be as interactive as possible. Please send us your questions, and with our wonderful moderator's assistance, I will strive to answer the questions in real time. Also, please note there are a couple of poll questions that I would appreciate your participation in. Speaking of which, a couple of our polls should be displaying right now. We'll come back, and if there's time, we'll share the results later on. Well, let's get started. So in U.S., there is an emphasis placed on understanding the market and competition. You see that listed as bullet point at number 1 and 5. However, being savvy in global business, I have heard from women, and myself included, that by incorporating the 3 center points, functionality, an understanding of how people function or relate in that part of the world, needs, which is an understanding of what the decision maker wants and what the influencers of those entities that you're engaging with need, as well as trends. Fueling yourself with global business trends found in local magazines, local journals, and of course social media is really important. For example, when I often check to find out what's trending in business conversations in Japan, I tune in to TED Talks taking place in Japan. Performing searches in Google using the country's exchange is a great way to expand your search. An example of that is google.cl, which is Google Chile. Another is the popular chat apps of that region. An example of that, and something which I use for my own personal use, is Line. Line is very popular in Asia and Latin America. By incorporating these types of applications, it will help you stay connected in the same way the locals do. Now, we'll review the Cosmopolitan Outlook. In this case, I mean worldwide scope. The points of region, culture and history, and geography and psychology are often interwoven. Nevertheless, women have an inept ability to understand these intricacies. I strongly believe it's what makes doing business on an international playing field so rewarding and very fulfilling for women. Because when you're sitting across the table from someone who's from thousands of miles away, and you have the ability to click with them based on your understanding of these points, you've cleared a major hurdle. The most popular method of connecting that I've found is through avid reading and direct personal engagement. I've gained a wealth of understanding about Latin America through my Latin American studies and Latin American literature. By reading works of authors from varying countries and improving upon my Spanish-speaking abilities, prompted my travel to many of the countries in that region. And I wanted to learn more. When I arrived, I talked to people, I learned, and I became connected with the locals and the long-term expats. In the areas of political and economic instability, women tend to take a closer look for the consideration of their safety. So following elections and keeping an ear to the ground of possible civil unrest is very important. As I mentioned in a few slides back, women have an inept ability to understand the sum total of a person's background. This is the foundation of the ability to communicate effectively cross-culturally. Scientifically, there have been talks of this process, the way that women communicate. For example, men think in boxes, women think in boxes and then have wires connected to them. And so having an understanding of, what stimulates and what can inspire a thought process or an idea through those interconnected ideas is what makes cross-cultural communication so essential for us. The greater number of women who hold positions in marketing and communications, journalism, and sales should be seen as a key indicator for this ability. So you may ask yourself, well, why is this even important? Well, in emerging markets such as African nations, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, South Africa, and Latin America's booming Brazil, business is founded on the basis of relationships. So that means that the most essential part of the business encounters and those initial meetings are going to be spent, have a significant amount of time focusing on personal affairs, such as your family, do you have any kids, where are you from, your background, some questions about religion and hobbies. These types of discussions could very well last up to 3 days, depending on the market. And since women are seen as organic engagers and natural connectors, there are some advantages for women to enter and influence these markets because of that. Each of these markets, however, need to be evaluated independently and with respect to the industries. There we go. So our next slide is highlighting women's excellent ability to network. We're really great at it. Men are too, but women who are successful in international business, they understand that they must place an important highlight, and they must invest in their social capital. Applying this investment will include having contacts in vertical and lateral positions. And because women are quite resourceful, which is great for networking, many women are already connected to multiple industries outside of the one which they work in. It's been my experience that if you show up to three or more international business chamber events, people will start to recognize you. And if you are foreign, you will stand out, which makes you that much easier to remember. But what makes you worth knowing? Better yet, what makes you worth introducing you to someone else in the group is based on the information you elect to share about who you are, what you do, and something that's really, really unique about your skill set. So networking in global business is a beneficial use of your time and effort in growing. Leveraging contacts to make introductions is very important. Let's examine the Japanese market, for example, where the culture of introductions is essential. You'd be far more effective connecting with someone within the organization and having that person connect you to key people in the community, or in this case, the business community, and also inviting you to join in future relevant events. All right, clicking here to the next slide. Okay, self-assurance. So women in the global market, as it applies to self-assurance, they feel good. When you feel good, that definitely boosts self-confidence. And they also feel that it's okay. It's okay to use humor to engage. Women in the global market, they feel that their ideas are supported, which sparks more risk-taking. They feel more comfortable thinking outside the box, going through methods and channels through non-traditional business as usual ways, and they oftentimes feel more energized and less drained. This can be attributed to better work-life balance and less stress on being compared to a male counterpart, as can be seen or which happens oftentimes here in the United States. So before we go to the next slide, here's our final poll that is part of the research that I'm doing. And that question should ask, which market do you think is more friendly? There we go. So we have our three choices here, one being Switzerland, the second being South Africa, and the third one being Singapore. All right. Well, if you answered South Africa, you're correct. South Africa is one of the BRICS nations, which includes Brazil, Russia, India, and China. These BRICS nations exceed 30% compared to the 20% in the G7 nations that are women-friendly. Interesting enough, according to the 2017 Grant Thornton's Women in Business report, Russia ranks in the top spot globally with 47% of senior roles occupied by women, which is incredible. The United States comes in on a list of number 15, ranks at number 15, with 42.7% of women in managerial positions. And if we look at the international markets from a European standpoint, we see that Turkey ranks very high in comparison to its EU nations or border countries, with 12% of their women being chief executives. Now, what I'd like to do is compare U.S. challenges to global advantages. In the U.S., the challenges, we continue to see women underrepresented in the STEM fields, mathematics, science, a lot of the heavy technology, aviation, aerospace. And we also continue to see some common practices of women inequality and pay discrimination. And the global advantages, we see women who are being heard and having their ideas implemented. That's I've heard women say often, I feel more respected because, not only were my ideas, brought to the meeting room or the boardroom, but they were also implemented into business practices. So it's really important. Another global advantage is women feel valued for their work experience and applying those experiences in the foreign market. They see that they're competing for level salaries, and there's also a sense of achieving both personal and professional growth, as well as growing their professional network. Other advantages, which are cultural, is a greater sense of trust. Oftentimes, just by showing up and being from another country, depending on the market and the industry, there's a natural trust that is bestowed to the woman. And then one thing that I find very interesting is that accents can often work in one's favor, too. From now, I'll talk a little bit about how all of this can be applied in the real world. So overall, it is necessary to be well-versed in your industry, and you must have a solid network which becomes something like your personal book of business. Organizations strongly consider candidates for their connections and their influence, as well as their knowledge base. My experience in working in a global capacity for nearly 2 decades now, the key has been proficiency in a foreign language or foreign languages, particularly when involved in business development. It helps make you relatable to the people in the market. They can connect to you simply because you took the time out to learn their language. It's really important to these emerging markets and working overseas. Also, having proficiency in the language keeps the locals honest during certain discussions or side conversations because they know that you understand what they're saying. Also, another skill, so to speak, and using air quotes, is showing up and being ready to be a player or to lead, showing up, showing your interest, and being a part of that environment. I am delighted to know other women with rather impressive resumes. It's been an honor, actually, to align myself with a lot of these ladies who've excelled in various fields such as nuclear engineering. I have another woman, a business acquaintance, who is doing international business law and living in Japan. And then there are senior executives in areas of finance, global wealth management, and in the aviation and aerospace industries. These ladies have successfully established themselves as influencers, and they're making significant impacts on a global scale. Before I launched my business, I had always worked with companies which had international presence. My impression was I would grow into these positions that would place me in an overseas assignment. Well, it wasn't until I applied for, It wasn't until I applied for a position directly, with the foreign government, with Japanese government, that I went to work overseas. Fortunately, that country was Japan, and it was already familiar because, as you recall, I lived there as a student, as a research scholar at Chiba. But this time, I was in Japan in a different capacity. It was a work capacity. And we know there's a difference when you live in a place as a student versus, working there. So my interactions were different because my focus was different. And I recall people, Japanese nationals in this particular instance, extending a certain type of respect to me because they saw me as someone that could make things happen, that could make impact, that could do something to help them. And so because of my unique background, it has definitely qualified me to be a part of some incredible projects. I've supported foreign companies based here in the United States, and I've often consulted with U.S. companies in their international endeavors, such as global business expansion, or if they're wanting to do licensing or looking for licensing partners, or, and I shouldn't say something as simple as, but even understanding international business etiquette of that region, been able to go in and assist those U.S. companies with that. A common factor that I have encountered with international business is the lack of confidence in communicating. And I'm not saying the lack of ability, but just being comfortable, well, they're from this place and we're from this place, and so there's a sense of discomfort there. Fortunately for me, people feel at ease sharing their challenges, not judging them. I'm approaching them from a position of how can I help you, how can I support you, and then also asking questions to find out what is the desired solution or outcome of that company. Because of their willingness to be very open with me, I make it my business to be very discreet and to take care of their confidential information. As a result, I've earned trust with very important people across many, many industries. If I had to summarize my strengths, I would say it would be my ability to network. I rather enjoy it. To manage projects, project management with an emphasis on logistics and, of course, budgeting, and also being creative. I've been quite privileged to join in powerful meetings with decision makers from overseas markets who have actually sought out my abilities. They've implemented my ideas, and they've valued me as an influencer in global business, almost considering me as a true partner to them, and I've been really fortunate. So as we close out the presentation, there we go. So as we close out the presentation, or my end of the presentation, I'd like to leave with a note of reality, inspiration, and encouragement. I'm in no way saying that if you're a woman and you seek to improve your career, just go run overseas and it's going to be cakewalk. I'm not saying that at all. Like in the U.S., there are many countries, many nations which are working to balance the delicate form of tradition versus progress. And overall, let's face it, it's business, so there are going to be challenges anyway. But what I am saying is to be prepared, understand your value, and do not be afraid. Don't be afraid to go out there. Don't be afraid that, it's at the time an unknown territory, someplace that's far. You're going to be fine. So sure, it's going to take time to involve yourself and to get connected and to know where the possibilities that lie for you as an individual woman on the international playing field. But these markets are actively seeking us out. They're looking for us. So there's no need to limit the application of your skill set to one region when you have the entire world to consider. Even if you take into consideration that there's 72 English-speaking countries in the world. I said earlier about being proficient in a foreign language, but there's 72 other options where English is the primary form of communication for business as an official language. So that's great. I would suggest that you can start off by connecting with international business communities right in your home turf. Surely there could be or should be various consulate offices. I mentioned before international business chambers. They host a lot of events, and it's perfect. It's great for networking and to allow yourself a platform to introduce yourself and to learn. And, you should definitely consider these resources of the international community. Should I answer the questions now?
A couple have started to come in. If others have questions, please type them in the chat box. It's up to you, Aiyana. You can continue or you can answer the questions now if you wish.
Oh, well, I'm very much close to the end, so let me just wrap this up and then I'll go into the questions, if that's okay with everybody. Thank you so much. So, my point was, when you're seeking out the international community on your home turf and then you expand to, taking those trips and, utilizing, for example, RIT. We have alumni chapters overseas. If you're involved in professional organizations, Rotary, as an example, you can use those as a springboard to build upon your international global network. And so through these interactions, who knows, it could very well lead to numerous internationally inspired possibilities. So in closing, if you're interested in learning more about me and my companies, feel free to send me an email. It's Aiyana@Gardner-Mathews.com. And I'd be happy to share a list of services and an overview of the scope of work that we provide and our existing partnerships, as well as my full biography. You can just simply reference the Me RIT webinar in the subject heading. I really, really hope that you found this to be informative. And so I'm going to go ahead and take a couple of questions, and then I'll come back and Right, so how do I even access this?
So I'll read them for you. So there's a question from Marie. Do women build their networks on a global level differently than men?
Yes, the answer is yes. A lot of guys, this is from my observation from, I polled some of my women who work and live overseas, long-term expats, is that they tend to stay within their industry. So if they're in the automobile industry, for example, they will network with those people either just strictly in the company that they work, and you rarely find them expanding across different industries, and like I mentioned before, from a lateral and vertical positions. So knowing different kinds or types of people within the organization, and then knowing people in different in different industries is very helpful when you're traveling overseas, because most of people in the global market, they've got tons of people that they're connected to, either somebody they went to school with that's currently a president in the IT field, and you need some connection in IT, or they themselves are in the medical field, but they know someone who's in construction, because they understand themselves. That is very important. And so women naturally function this way. We naturally look for different types of people. You know, it's just something that we do, and men tend to stay in not so much. So the short answer is yes, and that's the reason why.
Okay, there's another question from Dawn. Do you have any advice on how to identify a mentor who could provide the relevant insights necessary to be successful in business on a global stage?
My answer to that, Dawn, is you should seek out several mentors. And the reason why I say that is, again, leveraging their contacts. And I would say one mentor should definitely be within the field of study that you are pursuing or desire to pursue. They need to be very well connected, so you might actually want to vet them before, just assigning a mentor, and making sure that you establish good accountability. And it's more on your responsibility, that you're having frequent meetings, that you're attending certain networking events with them, so that they are now introducing you to that community of the industry, or for those industries. And I would say find somebody who has lived in that country, as well as finding somebody who is from that country. So I believe in keeping things, very having multiple connections in order to, and I apply this even for learning a foreign language, that if you only speak to somebody who is very fluent in that foreign language, and you could tend to not learn or utilize your language skills. And so the same thing can be said about a mentor. You want to leverage the network, leverage your interaction, and definitely seek somebody who is a national of the country that you want to go to, as well as somebody who is a local, or the same as you, quote unquote.
Okay. You mentioned that South Africa was very women-friendly, but what countries are the least women-friendly, and what advice would you have on how to be successful in those types of adverse conditions when your job demands it?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question? Which countries are least women-friendly?
You mentioned that South Africa was very women-friendly, but what countries are on your list of least women-friendly, and what advice would you have if your job demanded that you actually have to be conducting business in those less women-friendly locations?
So I actually have a link. Let me see. I was looking at, that's a great question. I was looking at some statistics 2 days ago, and coincidentally, but not much so, there are a lot of nations that popped up in the Middle East. I've traveled to the Middle East numerous times, and so my answer is the Middle East is listed, a lot of those nations are listed as the least women-friendly. But they are undergoing some aggressive changes to remove what is considered traditions, right, in order to welcome their women. They're qualified. These women are smart. They're educated, and they recognize that they're needed in the workforce. So, but as far as if you're required to go to a nation that's not so women-friendly, you just have to use good sense. Be strong, have an understanding that, maybe they're not happy to see you come. I mean, not everybody is happy to see you come, but that's why having certain knowledge of current events. In a lot of countries, it's sports. If you can talk about sports, I'm not really a big sports person, but I'll at least say, hey, well, what's going on with blah, blah, blah soccer team? And then just building a network, if you know in advance that you're going to be there, already connect with somebody on LinkedIn or through your preferred social media platform, and make a friend so when you arrive, you don't feel so alienated and you don't feel so alone that, oh my God, I'm not comfortable. And that will help a lot. I started the answer by talking about my experience in the Middle East. I've been a part of some discussions and meetings that, with guys, Arab nations, here I am an American, I'm not covered and things like that, and I really had no problem. So, but what I've done throughout my life and my career is that, yes, you want to be smart, you want to read those advisories, you want to read these things, but at the end of the day, it's you as a person, and, how you're able to communicate and connect will really help melt some of those initial walls that are put up, and that will be your key to success.
And if you mentioned a link, if you find that, you could send it to me. We can include it in our follow-up email. That would be great.
Okay. All right, great. No problem.
Let's see. Our attendee writes, I've always thought that using humor is not recommended when engaging with others from different cultures. You mentioned it as something that would be helpful. Is this a more recent shift in thinking around using humor in business outside the U.S.?
Absolutely. Yes, the answer to that question is yes. And you also see that I'm mentioning about what are considered emerging markets. I think in the past when we looked at the Western markets, Europe, Australia, North America, the sentiment is if you're going in, and I'm not, if you go in and you crack a joke, well, you're not going to be taken serious. Whereas in these other markets, they have a different mindset. And if you go in too stiff, people are going to think, what's the problem? And then you inadvertently make the room or the meeting and the people around you uncomfortable. So it's okay, a little bit of humor. It's okay to smile. It's okay to be relaxed. And because this is a completely different group that we're growing into, my initial encounters into international business has changed significantly over the past 20 years. I've seen it change even with women, which is what prompted this webinar, in certain roles and traveling overseas and being in boss positions. So, yes, there has been a change, and I'm very happy to say that, we're seeing a positive change and that we can be a part of that change right now.
Okay, looks like there's one remaining question from Marina. Are you seeing the Me Too concerns escalating in areas outside the United States, and where do you feel women face far fewer Me Too related issues and concerns?
So, no, I have not actively been following the Me Too campaign. And so, that's a delicate question. And what I can say is the point of the presentation is to highlight, or what I'm highlighting is me as an American woman, and I'm going overseas. The message is I'm automatically elevated than even a local woman. So, of course, again, that brings about a different discussion, call it discrimination. But as an American woman seeking future opportunities or opportunities in international business, it exists. But are there still discrimination and inequalities for the local women? Yes, and they choose to battle that on their own. But as far as going all out to a Me Too campaign, I have not seen that anywhere.
Okay, that's fair. Great. It doesn't look like we have any further questions. However, if those of you on the line come up with something that you would like to pose to Aiyana, please feel free to send those to us. You can email them to ritalum@rit.edu or tweet them to @RIT_alumni with the hashtag #MeRITWebinars, and we will direct all your questions over to Aiyana. I'd like to thank Aiyana for sharing her time and her information with us today. Remember, folks, all of you will receive an email from us in the next few days with a link to the webinar recording. And thanks again to all of you for joining us today. Please consider joining us on Wednesday, April 18th, which is next week, for Attracting, Hiring, and Retaining People, the gift that keeps on giving to your business, with alumnus Brian Haynes, a 30-year veteran from the National Security Agency. In this webinar, Mr. Haynes will offer a lively discussion of how each of the phases of attracting, hiring, and retaining employees can be applied to you in your workplace. Look for your special invitation in your email shortly. Thanks again to all of you. Thanks to Aiyana. Please exit this webinar by simply closing your WebEx window, and please do let us know what you thought of the webinar today by taking the very brief and anonymous survey, which will pop up when you exit. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great day.